The bright morning sun had barely climbed above the skyline when a single sheet of paper destroyed one man's entire world. After 18 years of loyal service, after fixing thousands of vehicles that carried the company's reputation across the country, after sacrificing birthdays, weekends, and sleepless nights to keep the business alive, Silas Mercer stood silently in the center of the maintenance garage with a termination letter trembling in his rough, grease-stained hands. Around him, dozens of mechanics lowered their eyes. Nobody dared to defend him. Nobody dared to speak. They all knew the truth, but truth had become worthless the moment the company's ruthless young CEO decided that appearances mattered more than honesty. Silas wasn't fired because he had failed. He was fired because he had become an inconvenience. Before we continue, if you believe kindness always finds its way back and that good people deserve a second chance, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire for more emotional stories that restore faith in humanity. Silas folded the paper carefully instead of crumpling it. His dignity had survived things much worse than unemployment. At 43 years old, he had already buried his wife 6 years earlier after an unexpected illness left him alone to raise his 10-year-old son, Rowan. Every morning before sunrise he prepared breakfast, packed school lunches, braided together little routines that kept his son's world stable, then drove to work wearing the same faded blue mechanic uniform that smelled permanently of engine oil. He never complained. He believed that honest work would eventually reward honest people. That belief had carried him through endless hardships, but this morning it felt painfully fragile. The new CEO, Vivian Ashcroft, had taken control of Ashcroft Automotive only 8 months earlier after her father retired due to health concerns. Educated at elite universities and celebrated by business magazines, Vivian promised investors a modern image and record-breaking profits. She spoke confidently about efficiency, restructuring, and removing outdated employees who no longer matched the company's future. Numbers impressed her. Image impressed her. Experience rarely did. Silas represented everything she wanted to erase. His work clothes were old. His pickup truck looked older. He never attended executive events or office celebrations because every evening belonged to Rowan. He refused overtime whenever it conflicted with school performances or doctor appointments. To executives, he looked unambitious. To his son, he looked like the strongest man alive. Few people knew that Silas had quietly prevented disasters that would have cost the company millions. Whenever suppliers delivered faulty parts, he caught them. Whenever inexperienced technicians overlooked dangerous brake failures, he corrected them before customers ever noticed. He accepted no awards because nobody offered them. His reward had always been another safe family driving home. Unfortunately, quiet heroes rarely receive loud recognition. The trouble began 3 weeks before his firing when Silas discovered microscopic fractures inside a shipment of newly purchased suspension components. They were cheaper than the original parts and had been approved under Vivian's aggressive cost-cutting strategy. Silas immediately filed detailed inspection reports warning that those components could fail under heavy stress. Instead of investigating, upper management accused him of resisting change. The purchasing director insisted the supplier was reliable. Financial executives praised the enormous savings. Middle managers nodded eagerly because disagreeing with the CEO had become career suicide. Silas refused to sign the approval papers. He simply could not attach his name to something that endangered innocent lives. Within days rumors spread that the veteran mechanic had become difficult, negative, and uncooperative. Those words reached Vivian far faster than his safety reports ever did. The final meeting lasted less than 6 minutes. Vivian declared that the company required employees who supported innovation rather than obstructed it. Human Resources handed him the envelope before he even sat down. Security politely escorted him through the building where he had spent nearly half his life. Outside, sunlight flooded the parking lot. Silas looked back only once. Not because he hoped someone would stop him. Because memories deserved one last glance. That afternoon he picked Rowan up from school with the same gentle smile he always wore. The little boy immediately sensed something had changed. Children often notice pain adults try hardest to hide. Silas never lied to his son. He admitted he had lost his job. Instead of crying, Rowan slipped his small hand into his father's calloused fingers and quietly reminded him that they had survived harder days before. Those simple words nearly broke Silas because they sounded exactly like something his late wife used to say. The following weeks tested every ounce of his strength. Bills accumulated. Savings disappeared. His old pickup began making strange noises. Job interviews ended politely the moment employers realized his previous CEO had labeled him insubordinate. Word traveled quickly across the industry. One evening, after another unsuccessful interview, Silas noticed an elderly woman struggling beside a disabled sedan near a quiet roadside during broad daylight. Most passing drivers ignored her. He parked without hesitation. Within 20 minutes he diagnosed a cracked fuel line, repaired it using spare materials stored inside his truck, and refused payment despite the woman's repeated offers. She thanked him warmly before driving away. Silas never learned her name. What he didn't know was that the elderly stranger happened to be Eleanor Ashcroft, the 78-year-old chairwoman of Ashcroft Automotive and mother of CEO Vivian Ashcroft. Unlike her daughter, Eleanor rarely announced her visits. She believed truth revealed itself when people didn't realize they were being watched. She had recognized Silas immediately. She remembered his name from dozens of maintenance reports praising impossible repairs completed under impossible deadlines. Curious, she requested his employment records that very evening. What she discovered shocked her. Safety reports ignored. Inspection warnings dismissed. Termination approved despite an outstanding performance history. More disturbing still, independent laboratory testing confirmed every concern Silas had raised. The cheaper suspension parts carried dangerous structural defects. Hundreds had already been installed. The next morning emergency board meetings erupted across corporate headquarters. Executives who had confidently defended the purchasing decision suddenly found themselves answering difficult questions under Eleanor's calm but unforgiving gaze. She listened without interruption. Then she requested one final document. The signatures approving the defective components. Nearly every senior executive who had supported Vivian had signed without reading Silas's warning reports. Silence filled the conference room. By noon, company lawyers confirmed that a nationwide recall was unavoidable. Millions of dollars would be lost. Lives, however, had been saved. Only because one mechanic refused to betray his conscience. At precisely 1 o'clock that afternoon, Eleanor entered the boardroom carrying Silas's original inspection folder. She placed it on the polished table without raising her voice. Then she announced that integrity had always been the foundation upon which Ashcroft Automotive was built, and anyone willing to sacrifice public safety for quarterly profits no longer deserved leadership. Her decision stunned everyone. Vivian was immediately removed as CEO pending a full investigation. Every executive who ignored or concealed Silas's reports was terminated before sunset. Some pleaded. Others blamed one another. None escaped responsibility. Meanwhile, Silas sat inside his modest kitchen helping Rowan finish homework, completely unaware that his life was about to change again. A black company vehicle quietly stopped outside his small home. Neighbors peeked through curtains. The chairwoman herself stepped out. Eleanor knocked gently before Silas opened the door, surprised to find one of the wealthiest women in the country standing on his porch. She looked around the humble house filled with repaired furniture, family photographs, and unmistakable warmth. This home possessed something corporate headquarters had lost long ago. Character. Without ceremony, Eleanor apologized, not as a billionaire, not as a chairwoman, but as a mother ashamed that her company had failed a good man. She personally offered Silas his position back. Then she offered something even greater. The role of National Director of Vehicle Safety, reporting directly to the board instead of any CEO. His responsibility would be ensuring that no employee was ever punished again for choosing honesty over convenience. Tears quietly filled Silas's eyes. Not because of the promotion. Because for the first time since losing his wife, someone had looked beyond his worn clothes and tired face and recognized the values he had spent a lifetime protecting. Rowan watched proudly from the hallway. His father hadn't become successful because he chased power. He became successful because he never abandoned his principles. Months later, Ashcroft Automotive regained public trust. Customers returned because they believed in a company willing to admit mistakes instead of hiding them. Employees worked with renewed confidence knowing honesty would finally be rewarded rather than punished. Silas transformed workshops across the country, introducing strict safety standards and encouraging every mechanic, apprentice, and technician to speak up whenever something felt wrong. He reminded them daily that courage often begins with one person refusing to stay silent. Vivian, after months of reflection and leadership training, eventually accepted responsibility for her arrogance. She wrote personal letters apologizing to employees whose voices she had ignored, proving that true redemption begins only when pride ends. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful stories about hope, kindness, courage, and second chances to people around the world. Speech Balloon Special Comment Request: tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Silas's position? Would you risk your job to protect strangers? As the golden afternoon sunlight stretched across the repaired factory floor, Silas walked through the same garage where he had once been escorted out in silence. This time, every mechanic stood and applauded, not because he had become an executive, but because he had reminded everyone that the strongest hands are not the ones covered in grease or wealth, but the ones that refuse to let go of honesty. And in that unforgettable moment, every person watching understood a timeless truth: a good person may lose a job, but they never lose the character that eventually changes the world.